In 1911, the Xinhai Revolution, led by the Nationalist Party, known as KMT, overthrew the Qing dynasty. Shortly after, the Republic of China was born under nationalist power, with their capital in Nanking. Although the establishment was successful, its rule was deemed unstable as China fell into turmoil. The fall of the Qing formed power vacuums to which regional warlords claimed authority without acknowledging the nationalist power. Famine struck northern China with constant floods, arousing unrest, and various ideologies also spread in the Republican period.
中国有两种意识形态彼此交锋，都试图成为中国的掌权者。第一是孙中山所创立的中国国民党所主张的三民主义。第二呢，是中国共产党所引导的共产主义思想。
Despite collaboration between the KMT and the CCP against the Japanese, previous tension formed the Second Chinese Civil War, and their ideological differences resulted in a communist victory to which the nationalists fled to Taiwan. Previous tension perpetuated in the cross-strait relationship, only changing when conditions evolved that made peaceful communication possible and political foundations necessary, leading to the 1992 consensus and mutual benefit. Rivalry between the two parties have long existed since the communists' gradual rise to power. In 1923, a united front was created against the Beiyang government on a northern expedition. The two parties had their own ambitions and collaboration. The nationalists hoped to legitimize their government, while the communists aimed to gain support of the peasants by promising land. After the KMT ceded their capital at Nanking, the huge communist support threatened their legitimacy, and the First United Front disintegrated into the First Chinese Civil War.
The communists became a threat the government could not ignore. And in 1930, Chiang Kai-shek attacked.
Under the chaotic internal conditions, external Japanese forces also threatened China in World War II. In response, the two groups formed another united front against the crushing army. However, hostility was existent. According to historian Michael Link, Chiang Kai-shek hoped that the American support troops would overwhelm the Japanese and drive the communists from their bases. The previous tension continued on. However, the plan failed as the Japanese surrendered. Even the temporary truce in the Chongqing negotiations were ineffective to prevent the conflict becoming a full-scale Second Chinese Civil War. In the First Chinese Civil War, the KMT military was extremely powerful. However, the situation flipped in the Second Chinese Civil War due to ideological differences. Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government postponed the economic reconstruction, which resulted in heavy taxes, inflation, and food shortages that made many lose faith. Furthermore, the government was filled with corrupt officials. The nationalists only drew support from the elites and rural landlords while neglecting the peasant population. The officials even withdrew granted land from seized communist areas. On the other hand, Mao Zedong focused on winning peasant support. In Mao's work, The Great Union of the Popular Masses, he wrote, "The popular masses in any country are much more numerous than the aristocracy, the capitalists, and the other holders of power in society. In China, the peasant population outweighed all others. Therefore, the CCP's use of propaganda and kindness to the poor gained massive support that enabled them to build a military more powerful than the nationalists. After the army liberated Sichuan, the nationalists fled from their capital in Nanking to Taiwan, where they set up a KMT government. On October 1, 1949, the People's Republic of China was established under communist rule in mainland. The communists won the war due to their ideology in appealing to the peasants, which gained them massive support and power, while the nationalists became more vulnerable due to corruption and the hatred of the people. Although major warfare ceased after 1949, hostility still existed. In 1952, Chiang Kai-shek ordered 400 minor attacks on mainland. Similarly, numerous propaganda posters were made depicting mainland's liberation of Taiwan using military force. Meanwhile, the global attitude about the situation altered drastically. In 1971, the Communist Party replaced the KMT seat in the United Nations. In the following year, President Richard Nixon visited mainland China. His visit resulted in the publication of the joint U.S.-Shanghai Communique. It stated that the United States adheres to the One China principle, which acknowledges that either side of Taiwan Strait remains one China, and that both Taiwan and mainland are regions of it. The mainland also insisted on the U.S. withdrawal of military support for Taiwan, and soon after established political ties with the U.S. and other countries.
这一次访华 和《上海公报》，台湾对此是十分愤怒，因为他觉得好像被美国给抛弃了。联合国大会决定将北京来的中国共产党政府作为中国的合法代表。1年后，美国的总统尼克松访华，这2个事件合并在一起呢，就开启了西方各国纷纷跟中国大陆建立外交关系的这样一个趋势。当然，台湾方面对此肯定是有很多的负面的情绪，恐怕后来还有很长时间对中国大陆的敌对情绪跟不合作情绪，都是从当年这些事件开始的。
Due to global impacts as well as defensive and stability purposes, Chen Qingguo, the leader of the KMT government at the time, responded with the 3-No policy, which included no contact, no compromise, and no negotiation, even under mainland's friendly outreach in a letter to the compatriots in Taiwan. The letter, written in representation of the government, showcased the change of policy towards cross-strait relations, under the background of economic reforms in mainland China, known as 改革开放, with the goal of deriving from revolution and social structural reforms to economic reconstruction. Deng Xiaoping suggested peaceful reunification of Taiwan instead of the former hostile methods of warfare.
人民代表大会常务委员会提出告台湾同胞书，其中内容是以和平统一、一国两制来取代原来的解放台湾。
However, the strict policy set by Chen Qingguo prompted other methods of interaction.
1986年，台湾中华航空公司的一个机师长王希爵呢，驾机来往大陆，他就因为怀念老父，苦的不能够到大陆探亲，才做出这样一个非常极端的决定。
王希爵驾货机飞回大陆引发的华航事件，直接点燃了老兵们新一波回归故土的激情。大多数老兵则不断透过街头示威抗议、媒体喊话等途径，向当时的台湾地区领导人蒋经国强烈要求，准许老兵回大陆老家。
经国先生突然是找我们要让他们要回家乡，要探亲团聚，要拟定一个政策，要开放大陆探亲。
Chen lifted the 38-year ban for humanitarian purposes while putting a policy to democratize Taiwan, which also handed more rights to the people. Since Taiwan was working under the 3-No policy, communication happened through non-official organizations such as the International Red Cross. However, interactions resulted in a series of problems such as stowaways, criminal offense, and letter verifications, which all needed fundamental political agreements, prompting the establishment of Straits Exchange Foundation in Taiwan with its parallel, the Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Straits and Mainland. The two groups met in Hong Kong to settle such matters and answer the central question: who represents China, in order to establish political foundations. In the meeting, the two groups concluded with the One China principle. Both sides acknowledged it to be China, but they could interpret the meaning of it differently. The agreement, known as the 1992 Consensus, benefited both sides from the cooperation that resulted. New trade opportunities were opened, and economies boosted with the cross-strait trade volume as high as $199.4 billion in 2017. 900 flights a week exchanged 8 million tourists that boosted Taiwan's service sector and reduced unemployment by 1%. The 1992 Consensus serves as an important compromise to the long-term conflict and plays a significant role in the cross-strait relationship.
The 1992 Consensus is the cornerstone of the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. If authorities in Taiwan really have the goodwill and sincerity to improve cross-strait ties, they should return to the common political basis of upholding the 1992 Consensus.
Although the KMT and the CCP collaborated in World War II, their conflicts continued to result in the Second Chinese Civil War, in which the Communists won due to peasant support and nationalist degradation. The tension persisted after the nationalists fled to Taiwan, and only altered after conditions evolved that formed interactions, resulting in the 1992 Consensus, which benefited Taiwan and mainland. The 1992 Consensus serves as an important factor that continues to resolve conflict and improve the cross-strait relationship.